Hello, good evening, and welcome back. Happy International Men's Day for what's left. So, from Forbes, should we be celebrating International Men's Day? Yes, yes, we should. Have you seen any celebrations about it today? Probably not. And I only know these things are happening because I'm in the loop, so trying to mention it to people during my day, it's what? Nobody knows, and nobody's going to mention it if I don't. So I wouldn't be surprised if you weren't aware of it either. But yes, today is International Men's Day, particularly for mental health awareness and trying to create the more healthy male role models for men to aspire to. We understand that men are suffering in modern society. They are being beaten down by everybody, especially straight white men being the beating stick for everybody, and it's okay to hate straight white men, and therefore that is then causing suffering for everybody, because when you take out the most responsible key for your society or your system to turn, then the whole thing collapses. And you've probably seen women complaining about it, saying, where are all the good men? So, well, when you take all the fucking spaces, then you can't be surprised when you can't find somebody worth being with. And then, of course, when the courts favour women so much, that you're thinking, well, no wonder men don't want to be with them. When the quotas are given to them, then of course men are going to aspire to anything. Then of course men are going to end up more homeless and they're going to kill themselves at such an astounding rate, seeing as suicide is the number one killer for men under 35. In fact, some say it's for men under 50. It is ridiculous. Number one killer for young men and young and middle-aged men. How absurd can you get? And then you might be saying, oh yes, well, it's also in day-to-day life when you have things like nightclubs, and then it's free admission but just for women, when the homeless shelters are set up for women only and they're all focused on women. And when you have quotas so that you can't have straight white men, no, they're the bad guys, and you can't accept any of them in, and any male issue should be laughed at. Isn't that right? When things like this happen, and yes, I'm talking about the Labour councillor for Birmingham Yardley, she who should not be named, that, or when you have these in place, then of course your society is then going to collapse. When you have the most helpful and productive members of society deciding to tap out of it and not participate, then of course everything else is going to fall apart. And that's what we see, degeneracy in society, and it isn't being able to be, the backbone isn't there anymore, because the men who have their act together are deciding to tap out and say, no, I'm not going to be a part of this, I'm going to go somewhere where I'm actually appreciated. Then of course this is going to happen, but it seems to be taking so long for people to realise it, and they really don't want to. But they have found a way to kind of maybe accept International Men's Day, but that's on two very particular criteria. One is where they're saying men are more diverse. So this means you've got to include, of course, it can't be straight white men. No, they're still evil, so we won't include them. But what about gay men? What about trans men? What about gender identity being, well, gender fluidity, if you will? So now we're not sure, as they say here. Indeed, gender fluidity challenges more and more the very notion of binary gender divisions and what a man is supposed to be. Right. And then, okay, so they can't be white, they've got to be from different ethnic minorities as well. And then it's toxic masculinity. So we weren't wrong, okay? These cunts are saying, yes, that we're not wrong. The problem is toxic masculinity. It isn't men in general. Isn't that nice? It's just everything that women want in a man and what makes a man successful. That's the bad stuff. So, well, fuck off. How about that? Because have you considered, with anything like these bullying tactics, it isn't the people who you seem to suggest that you're against that you're going to affect. It's the people who you suggest that you're for. It's for the more weak-willed men, the men who are struggling, that are now going to beat themselves up because of this apparent toxic masculinity, and you're only making things worse. What about, wasn't it Silverman, who set up a homeless shelter just for men, so that men can have that safe space, if you will, and of course, what was the response to that? He was bullied to suicide. Yes, somebody tried doing a nice thing for men. What was the response? He was bullied until he killed himself. Things like this are why an International Men's Day might be a good idea. So when people say, oh yeah, it's it's just because it's coming out of an attack of International Women's Day, and it's because, oh, if the women have it, why can't the men have it? No, it's so much more than that. It's saying that when there is such a drive to demonize one particular faction of your society for no good reason, then maybe it's worth considering what they actually contribute instead of just beating them down. But the Forbes author does change his tune, credit where it's due. He says everyone needs to belong. Much identity theory comes from notions of the other, the idea that in the absence of self-confidence, or indeed as a result of fear, we find it easier to define what we are not than what we actually are. That can allow men to ignore feelings and avoid admitting vulnerability, because boys don't cry. So they go on to toxic masculinity, but the point is, yes, vulnerability, sure. I don't have a problem with that. I do have a problem with victimhood. And that's where there's a very, very blurred line to say, oh, I'm vulnerable here. No, you're just trying to say that you're weak in order to then be a victim, and you're not actually being vulnerable, you're being emotionally manipulative. So you can fuck off as well. If you're trying to open up to somebody that you care about and admitting your faults, then fair enough, but vulnerability for the sake of it isn't good. Vulnerability isn't something that should be heralded as a virtue. No, it's bad. It's something that should be noticed, and then something you should be able to work through, not just let it fester. It's go, yes, I understand where my vulnerabilities are. I understand where I'm weak, and that's something that I'm going to work on so that I am not weak in that place. Great, you acknowledge you're weak. Now stop just mentioning it to people and start fixing it. Maybe mention it to people and say, hey, here's why I'm failing. Do you think you can help? Instead of just saying, oh, I'm weak here. Give me stuff. That isn't how it works at all. It's another asking for more empathy, and I would say, no, I mean, we could just go for equality, if you will, or if women still want to have these privileges, like not wanting to be forced into combat, and then when they do decide they want to join the army, or the military in a broader sense, is that then the standards are lowered so that they can enter. So if they don't want to enter, but the requirement to vote is that if there's a war on, you have to risk your life for it because you voted in that party, then maybe women don't want to vote either. Maybe you should just be people with property for voting, because otherwise you open it up to bribery, which is apparently illegal, but the government has found a way around it because all they want is power. Overcoming stereotype threats, that's all about toxic masculinity. Although they do mention Philip Tanzer, who's a men's rights advocate, yes, I say advocate, not activist, from Germany, who says 3 things make you a man: building a house, planting a tree, and becoming a father. So building a house, of course, that means providing for your community and for the people around you, creating something from nothing in order to help the people that matter most to you. It's actually being a functioning, contributing member of society and building something concrete. Planting a tree, so the idea is that you're doing something for future generations that you cannot experience or enjoy in your time. It's planting a tree in which the shade you will never sit in, and becoming a father, so bringing in the next generation. And that isn't just being a dad, but it's actually being a father. But, of course, they attack this as well because they don't wish to understand it. They also go on to mention that the othering for a lot of MRI activists is to blame feminism. Yes, I mean, we can clearly see why when we look at the way that the laws have gone to favour women, as feminism is just female empowerment, female supremacy, if you will. At the 2019 International Conference on Men's Issues, feminism bashing was a key theme. So basically saying, yes, here's how the evil is precipitating in society, and even more so in law. This is how we can stop it from happening. Here's how we can try to make things a little more equal. But of course, you just take that as feminism bashing, which you would then, by extension, take as female bashing. And then they say overly woke, and they do, thankfully, say here that assuming all men should reject masculinity could be as equally unhelpful as assuming all men need to build houses and become fathers. Okay, yeah, I've explained why they're wrong there, but yes, it's worse. It's not equally unhelpful, it's just bad. Men do have parenting rights, do suffer domestic abuse, and do have unmet mental health needs. And as far as parenting rights go, women have the privilege to receive custody of the children unless they exhibit a major character flaw. Again, favours women. Many men are leading lives of quiet desperation. Attacking their supposed toxicity doesn't help. very good. And if you drive men to that, especially as Black Pill mentioned, it seems to be a facet of white men, particularly straight white men as it happens, that they come up with the most extreme situation first. And he mentions this in his breakdown of Office Space, that they will go to that most extreme and then go, no, I shouldn't do that, until it comes a point at which they go, no, actually, this is the only solution left, and I am going to go ahead with it. So you can see this, the ones of quiet desperation, that is just suicide, or the ones who wish to be a bit more overt with it, that is then murder, suicide, or mass killing sprees, because then they need to be noticed, and they are attacking the system that has attacked them for years. It is exactly the same that you see when somebody has been bullied for years, and then they decide to stand up with their bully and do something back to them. And in instances like that, what is of course the recourse? It is to say that the person who then finally snapped, they're the bad one because of the zero tolerance on bullying. Because zero tolerance on bullying is also a fucking stupid idea, because you don't know what's happening. So your zero tolerance misses out a load of stuff. All you see is the overt stuff by somebody who doesn't care about the consequences anymore because you've done nothing to help. And then you wish to punish them. Fuck off. You're too self-righteous. You're not helping anybody. So hey, train martial arts. Join my dojo. They say we should be able to celebrate differences rather than demonizing them. Yes, well done. Celebrate differences may be a bit much, but accepting them, I'm fine with that. As Obama has recently pointed out, piousness is not helpful, casting stones is not activism, and does not lead to change. It actually contributes to further polarization. Yes, exactly. That's the othering they mentioned earlier. Jolly well done. Bring somebody up instead of tear other people down. So, their conclusion. If International Women's Day is to celebrate women's success in the face of sexism, International Men's Day can celebrate men challenging stereotype threat. Or also sexism. Why not that? Men are just as lonely, just as vulnerable, but far less likely to admit it. And if you want International Women's Day, then I would say, also similarly, why don't you have a positive gender role there? Seeing as the whole idea from the woke progressives is just to tear apart the family and leaving women bitter and lonely. Why not actually contribute to International Women's Day, seeing as for whatever reason it has to be brought up on International Men's Day? But why not, sure, when that comes around again, next March, say, hey, here are the women that are leading happy lives and they're good role models, and they're mothers, they're family people. They've found a fulfilled life through raising their children. Maybe that's something to aspire to, and you'll actually be more fulfilled through doing that. Why don't we do that instead of saying, you must have a career, and then you decide that you really want children, because women do, and then in order to be a good woman, you then have to give them away to daycare, so you never spend time with them, and then they become resentful of you, and you never get that good bond with your children, and then you feel depressed and go on drugs as well. Brilliant. Fucking brilliant. They say men are just as lonely, just as vulnerable, but far less likely to admit it. Yes, that's largely because men would actually like to be able to do something about it, and then if they mention that, oh, now it's masculine fragility, or male fragility, because there's no winning with these people, they just take men. In the book Stories for Boys Who Dare to Be Different, we discover a plethora of role model men we can aspire to, guys who have achieved success without bashing women or polarising communities. International Men's Day can be less about othering women and justifying misogyny, and more about celebrating male diversity to give vulnerable men a real choice and positive hope for the future. Should we be celebrating International Men's Day? Hell yes. So at least I can agree with his final sentence. Hell yes. In terms of male diversity, I'm all for the diversity of opinion, that you are able to do whatever you want. I do not care about your skin colour, I do not care about your sexuality, I do not care about your gender preference, or whatever the hell you want it to be. My point for this is to say, if you have a particular group that has been attacked, if you wish to play the identity politics card, then I'm going to beat you at your own game because you are wrong. And I know that because people who wish to bring up identity politics are the woke progressives. And that's the funny thing, of course, isn't it? With people like the alt-right, apparently, that they hear identity politics being played all the time and bashing straight white men because of it, and they say, well, fine, we've tried to rise above it, but we're actually going to play your game, and we're going to win, because that's what we do. I've mentioned before about the British spirit is a stiff upper lip. It's pulling together when times are hard. It is not giving up. It is, as Winston Churchill says, that when you're going through hell, keep going. That is what the British spirit is. And America and Australia, they both come from Britain. They both have that attitude, the never give up attitude. That is something stereotypically British, stereotypically ethnically white as well, if I may be so bold as to say, and that is what will happen here. And you can take that to the bank with you, that if you wish to play identity politics, straight white men, the traditional roles will win. Because the best thing about it, or the worst thing from your point of view, is that everybody knows it is that type of man, independent, confident, doesn't give a fuck what other people say or think, is also going to be attracting the most women and having the largest families. So they are going to have the most success in life, and they're going to be the most popular to everybody as well. So you will never win if you play identity politics. I think you're starting to see that you're losing. But that's it for now, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Let me know how you decide to celebrate International Men's Day. If there's anything I missed and what you would like mentioned. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your week.